Hi, welcome back to the Montego Bay, and here we are picking up on the T25 T3 TDI project. Sorry it's been a bit of a wait, but it's been a bit of a pause between myself and Tim. But I went to see him Monday gone. Now I've picked up my kit. It's very comprehensive, so I thought I'd run you through that and the van again really. So this is kind of what I got from him. So I'll start with the gear linkage. So the Passat Gearbox is now going to be cable operated. In the Passat it was mechanical. So to do that, he's provided me with these lovely gear cables. I think he's had these made up. There's two cables, so one's for up and down the gate, and the one with the springs on, that's across the gate. And those cables, they join onto this sort of really nice looking cast sort of gear selector. So the lever's going to sit like that, cables go on there, which then, because well my van's got a TD floor, so it's a bit higher, but sits on this pedestal, I think is what he calls it. So that bolts up in there, and then this all sitting there bolts onto the floor. So I'm really excited about that. It'd be nice to get rid of that massive lever and not have to punch the radio if I want first gear. Moving on, he's also provided with these sort of conversion flanges for the CV joints, the inner CV joints. So left and right are different apparently. So on the Passat Gearbox, the drive flange is bigger than on the T25. So that's what that's about. We'll probably cover that when we get there. What else? This is throttle linkage. So on the Passat, it's going to go through the ECU, so it's not mechanically linked to a pump or anything. So you have a potentiometer from an early Passat or Audi, I believe. I've got one somewhere. If not, I'll have to buy another one. And then the T3 T25 throttle cable sort of just goes straight onto it. There you go. He's also quite cleverly, what did I do with it? He's wired up the Passat throttle pedal, just so I can have that in the engine bay of the van, just to rev it up. Should be quite laugh, to be honest with you, put that on a block of wood, because I am a child. So that's throttle. He's also provides you with a mount for the MAF sensor. Sits in there, and that was another great thing about going down seeing him and seeing some of his vans, because I can see where he's put all these. So it saves me from scratching my head or trying to figure out from emails. So hang on to your MAF if you're braking a vehicle. MAF bracket. Engine mounts. Sorry if I've not aiming the phone at the right place. So that's oil filter side, and that's the opposite. So that's what gives it its 50 degrees sort of cant over, so it fits under the lid. And then it's pretty comprehensive. So I'll just move these CV adapters out of the way. We spoke in some depth about breathers for the gearbox, because now the gearbox is going to be inverted 180 degrees. It's going to be upside down. The drain plug is now going to become the vent, and the vent is going to have to be put in a loop. So to do that, he's given us bits of hose. He's given me Y pieces to put that together. And this is what goes in place of the original drain plug. So it's kind of like an adapter really. He didn't actually have this bit. I just went to my hydraulic shop, and yeah, it's just M18 by 1.5 by ½ inch. I think it was about a £5. That's hopefully tied. Anyway, so you can give us all clamps and all sorts, really nice clamps. So that is gearbox breather, that's throttle linkage, that's gear linkage, that's the CVs, that's the engine mounts. Intercooler, duct and piping, this is what this guy is. So the intercooler sits in there, and this sits next to the gearbox, and then he's given us this thing so you can divert cold air through your intercooler. It's all very cool actually. Induction piping, this is all part of the kit again, so all the silicone join hoses, all the joiners, these have actually got bead rolls as well, just so things don't pop off. So I think that is from, this is the hot side, so before the intercooler, and then coming back out of the intercooler you actually use a pipe that comes with a car. You cut it in half and you rotate it just so it faces the right way. Again, I'll show you when I get to that, but it looks very simple. But even just to do that, he's given me a bit of silicone pipe, you know, just because he's a nice bloke really. The wiring loom, yeah, he's spliced in. I sent him the Passat loom and the van loom, and he's kind of all spliced it together, just so it's virtually plug and play really. That's going to make my life much easier. He's also done some really cool things, just so if I want cruise control down the road, he's kind of just made it a bit easier for me to do. He had to do some pretty trick things with relays, etc. He's also moved the diagnostics port, or he's extended it so it's nearer the front of the cab, which is really cool because you can get these things you sort of plug into them, and it'll just give you live data, which he quite likes. So yeah, there's a lot of work there, and I think for the money paid, I'd say that's pretty well worth it. You know, it's the same as the gear cables for a plug and play wiring loom essentially. So if you're not into wiring or don't want to do it like me, both like me, yeah, I'd say that's a good shout back. So that's kind of that side. At the minute I'm just taking parts I need. So the exhaust manifold comes off your JX engine. I've just managed to take this off. Needs a bit of a skim, but that's not a problem. I've also got to move the alternator, so when the engine sort of sits like that, when it's canted over, the alternator's going to stick up too high, so I've got to take that off, move it down, make a bracket so it doesn't wobble about. Again, when I figured it out, I'll record it. Alright, so let's get to the gearbox and I'll show you what he's done that side. We jump out here. So this is the Passat Gearbox. Again, what Tim's done, he's machined this face down. It used to be about here. He's machined it down, and then as part of the kit, this is the bracket that will sit. Obviously it's not lined up with the bolts, but that will sit like so. That's just so the clutch and the bearing, the pilot bearing, you know, I don't need to do anything with that. It will just sort of bolt in, and this will rotate the engine 50 degrees over to exactly what I need. Again, that's absolutely brilliant. And Tim can do the machining quite cheaply as well, so it's well worth doing. That would be a lot of faff otherwise if I couldn't get that box machined. So really pleased with that. And then just waddle over to the van. A new addition to the fleet is this 1.6 MX-5. I was actually given it. I don't know if you remember, but I went to pick up that Renault 4 for a friend that I'd found in a hedge. That was his parting gift to me. So yeah, just a little track toy. It's a lot of fun. It's very addictive to drive actually. So, but there's a lot of MX-5 content out there, so I don't think I'll bother doing much with it for YouTube. But back in the engine bay of the van, it's a lot rustier than I remember actually. So yeah, I think I'm going to clean all this up, tackle any rust. I think this has been an advisory for me before, so I tackle that. Things I've got to do in here. So the drive shaft angle, once the new gearbox is in place and it's flipped upside down, is actually going to be too steep. Let's see if I can actually, so there's a chance it will foul the control arm there. So what I've got to do is drop the engine down a bit So in that kit he's given me little blocks, which I didn't show you, but I can always go back in the shed. So what I've got to do is, so this is the sort of the bar, that the cradle for the engine. I've got to cut this off around here, cut these welds, bolt this lot with his blocks, which will lower that hole down here, re-drill this plate, weld it on, put that to the engine and bolt the gearbox. There's my finger. Bolt the gearbox about back in, so the back of the gearbox bolts there, and then I'd lift the back of the engine up, and where these plates will hit these bars again, I'd weld it back in. That seems to be the best way. Again, I looked at Tim's van. He showed me exactly what he did. It looks pretty simple, but he said that was the best way to go about it. So I'll probably be doing that fairly soon, possibly before I paint this thing. Yeah, and it's the same again on this side. Right, so that's the next bits of work to do, really. That said TDI engine. I think I've got to put the buzzer of doom switch in there. I've taken that from the old engine, so I think it's just take that plug out. I think that's just fuel lines. So when I go to install, again I missed this at the start, I'll go back in the shed. I've got to take this manifold off and put the JX one in, but I've also got to clock this turbo. So on the whole set on the Mercedes was really easy. It was just a C-clip, you know, you can even take the housing off. So yeah, so because I've got to clock it, got to I've got to modify the oil feed. Tim's going to send me an oil return, but this is got the variable vanes in it. So Tim's kind of warned me, saying you've got to be careful taking these apart because he's ruined one before, but he's got plenty of instructions. But when it comes to that, I'll probably do that along with you. It could be quite tricky. What else? I've got EGR blanking plates in there. And then to do the job, I've kind of just made this up. So it's a Gearbox Jack for a truck. It's an EPCO jack. It's basically just a trolley jack, but you've got a big base here. I use this to take the engine out. The sump just sits on there. Gearbox overhangs. It's really stable. So you pump it up, but you can also alter pitch and roll. So it's perfect just for aligning things. So I've just I've got some steel line about. Anyone who's spent any time in a server room, you'll probably know what this is. Just welded it in, hence why I got the welder there. That's nice and solid, ready to be a work table, really, to build this engine. So I'll go back in the shed and I'll show you what I mean. Magical red box. These are the blocks I'll use to lower the engine. So that's where the bolts go through. And these are what I'm going to use to adapt from the old turbo, from the JX, to the new one on the AEN. So it's pretty thorough kit, I must admit. And so far he's been a really pleasant bloke to deal with. So I'll keep you up to date. But yeah, T25 TDI, here we come.